What's going on, everybody? It's Wednesday. I got my guy Marco Martinez with me today. What's up, Marco? How you doing, buddy?
What up, man? How's it going?
It's going well, man. I'm glad to have you on today. Make sure you guys hit that like button on this video and subscribe to this channel if you would. I'm trying to get to 10K, almost there. And then also Marco Martinez, Clutch Gene Sports on YouTube. Hit the like button if you're watching on his channel. Make sure you're subscribed. If you subscribe to me or not subscribed to Marco's really tapped in, knows his stuff. Make sure you are subscribed to Marco as well, man. We got a lot to talk about. This is the perfect guest for today for what we're talking about. If you don't know Marco, you should. But if you don't, Marco's he's tapped in. He's worked in jobs where he has met a lot of people. I'll put it that way, and so he knows a lot of things. I have less people that I know, but I do hear things from time to time, and we've both been hearing things from separate people in regards to Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And so we're going to start the show off with that and just kind of dive into what we've been hearing and what we know is going on, what we think is going on, all that stuff, so you guys can be better informed in that regard. It is Wednesday. Usually Coach is on. Coach couldn't make it today, but we are blessed with the presence of my guy Marco. So let's talk, brother. Let's keep these guys separate because I think it's important. They're both two separate players, two different situations. I want to start at the beginning, and I guess I'll kind of tell you. We'll take it step by step. I'll tell you what I've heard, and you can tell me if you've heard the same thing or different things. And some of this stuff I've heard directly. This is what I've heard, and some of it is just what I'm gathering from everything that's been reported. So if we go back after the season, Brandon Ayuk was frustrated with his usage in the Super Bowl. And I think it was important to him to be in a system that uses him more, like it features him more than the 49ers have so far, and also that he gets paid. I think those were the two most important things for Brandon Ayuk after the Super Bowl. Going into the draft, I think Brandon Ayuk was open to getting traded or to a team that would have used him more. I think he was open to it. Not against coming back to the 49ers, but there was two things important to him. It wasn't just money. It's I want to get paid and I want to be used. I want to be featured more. I don't want to be the fourth, fifth option anymore in an offense. So what I'm gathering is that was what was told to the Niners. And so the Niners had the option of paying him and featuring him more or trading him. And so going into the draft, they did shop Brandon Ayuk. But what they wanted for Brandon Ayuk was a lot higher than any other teams were willing to pay. And even now, we're at post-draft. Teams have called on Brandon Ayuk, or at least one team that I've heard has called on Brandon Ayuk. But the 49ers want way more than that team is willing to pay, at least for right now. The contract talks are going well, and Kyle Shanahan really wants to bring back Brandon Ayuk. They're hopeful they can give him a contract situation. And anybody that's calling about Brandon Ayuk at this point, it's a one-sided call. The 49ers would want you'd have to move mountains to get Brandon Ayuk at this point. So that's my understanding of everything that's going on with Brandon Ayuk. I want to get your take on what you've been hearing, and is it different from what I just said?
Yeah, so from what I had heard was they were never shopping Brandon Ayuk. They were more so taking calls, and it was such a high price. Like you're saying, like it wasn't an arm and a leg for Brandon. Like if you're gonna get him, you're giving up a 1, a 2, and probably a future pick. Like it was something drastic where they're like, okay, we can't refuse a 1 and a 2 this year or a 1 and a 2 next year plus another pick in the following draft. So that's what I had heard. I had heard like the entire time BA's not leaving. Like, and I had people had asked me like, "What are your percent?" I was like, "I'm like 95% sure. Like, BA's not leaving," because what I was hearing was he's not leaving. Like, I don't know if you remember when after the incident where his family came out and they put on social media that they were unhappy, and then BA kind of confirmed it, and then that reporter came out with the Jags, like, "Oh, the Jags called pick 17 and Zay Jones." Immediately I called and like that was laughed at. Like they're like, no, we're not moving him. I don't know why that's being mentioned. That's never been mentioned to us. We don't. They called us. We hung up the phone right away because it's about BA. So from what I had heard, it was just more so he just wants to get paid. Like he wants to be in a pass heavy offense, but his main primary goal is to get paid. Like he doesn't care about the stats, the glamour. He just wants his money. Like he knows what he's worth, and at the end of the day, he knows there's a team that's going to pay him that. So whether he stays with the Niners, he's going to get paid, or if he's on the road with a different team, he's getting paid. So that's all he's worried about, from what I've heard.
Interesting. All right. So either way, it sounds like the 49ers, whether they were literally like shopping him or whether people were calling about him, they didn't want him going anywhere without serious compensation coming back in return. And so their plans are for Brandon Ayuk to be on this team, and that's their goal. And sounds like the contract talks are going well. And it sounds like they want way more than any team's willing to pay. So it sounds like Brandon Ayuk is going to get a contract and be here. I wouldn't rule it out that they fifth-year option him. I think that's still a possibility. But from everything I've heard, it sounds like the contract talks are going well and that Brandon Ayuk will be here. I seriously doubt that Brandon Ayuk is not here for this coming season. I mean, you agree on that?
Oh yeah, he'll be able to be on the team this year, no matter what, even if it's on that
Yeah.
fifth-year option. But I think there's going to be a deal that gets done. Like you said, you've heard they progressed in talks. I had heard that during the draft, like right before the draft, they had progress on talks. Like it was, hey, like we have a set plan. Like this is what we want to negotiate with moving forward. That's what we're going to start with. BA was happy with it. That's why he didn't get moved, because truthfully, BA could have forced the Niners' hand on draft night. Say, hey, you know what? By the way, that contract you guys offered me, I'm not touching that at all. And if that's the case, it's like, okay, damn, like he's not going to take an extension with us. We have to move him, and that wasn't the case. It sounded like both parties were on the same page. So that's what you're getting with the Niners and BA right now. Two groups that are on the same page. Let's get a deal done, and I think we might see it. I know a lot of times we see it closer to camp, but I think we're more possibility of seeing it earlier than that.
Yeah. And so based on what I heard and what I know you've heard, and the fact that they want all of these things for Brandon Ayuk, that it was really never likely that he was ever going to get traded, because a team would have to pay a lot in draft capital for Brandon Ayuk, and they would have to pay Brandon Ayuk, which is unrealistic. If you're a GM, why would you trade your first round draft pick and pay a guy $30 million when you could just draft a wide receiver? And that's why it never made sense to me. And that's why I said that I never thought Brandon Ayuk was going to be traded as well. So sounds like we're in agreement on Brandon Ayuk. Do you think that's the right move for the 49ers, not to trade Brandon Ayuk and to move forward with him?
Yeah, I don't think you trade dudes. Like when you're same thing with Buckner. When they traded Buckner, I thought that was a mistake. You don't trade dudes. You figure it out cap wise. Like you could manipulate the cap for a couple of years with said player. So for example, BA his first 2 years, his cap numbers aren't going to be drastic. It'll drop this year to 4 when they extend him. Next year it'll be in like that 12, 13 range, which is what he's getting paid this year. So it's like when people are like, "Oh, he's going to be way too expensive for the first couple." No, he's not. Like all that stuff is BS, because you can manipulate the cap numbers where it'll go up year 3, which by then cap numbers are already up. And if you look at the Niners roster, they don't have any dudes who are getting paid 3 years from now. So like I don't think I'm not worried about cap numbers or anything like that. It's just more so um, keeping a true number one receiver in the building is more important for Brock Purdy's growth than getting rid of a guy like that. And I think that's why the Niners were so high on Brandon Ayuk. They understand what Brock needs to be, what BA means to Brock, my bad. And if you lose a guy like that, what happens to Brock? Does he have a regression, not having any true man beaters? What like that? And I think that's what was more of a concern than anything for the 49ers. And I think that's why their price tag was so high.
Yeah. Yeah, and you notice the 49ers, they have 11 wide receivers. They drafted 2, but neither of those 2 wide receivers are wide receiver ones. The ones they drafted are not wide receiver ones. Neither one of those guys was drafted in with the possibility they might be replacing BA. I don't think the 49ers ever really expected to move on from Brandon Ayuk. That's why they had ridiculous asking prices, and it was never really going to happen. I know Mike Silver reported that it was, and a lot of people reported that it was. I never thought it was going to. I know you never thought it was going to. And so this is where we're at. It sounds like Brandon Ayuk is the future wide receiver 1 for the 49ers. And I think people that are fans of Brandon Ayuk can take comfort in that. Real quick, Dave Barkley says, "What up, Ryan? What's up, buddy? Nice to see you, man. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it." All right, so let's talk about the other situation because it's a different player and it is a different situation. Um, the question here is, before we get into this question, Slick Rick to replace Deebo Samuel, and what does Ricky Pearsall say about Deebo Samuel? Before we get into that, let's go through the same timeline with Deebo, and I'll give you what I've heard, and you can tell me if you've heard the same thing or different. So it sounds like, just like Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers were willing to move on from Deebo, but they wanted an arm and leg. I've heard specifically that Kyle Shanahan wants both Deebo and Brandon Ayuk for this coming year, but they were willing to listen to offers, and they have talked about it. And with Deebo, the asking price is not as high as Brandon Ayuk, but it's still higher than it seems like most teams were willing to pay. Now we fast forward. Deebo Samuel is not happy about being shopped and is a little disgruntled at the moment because of that. And teams have called on Deebo Samuel as well. And the Niners have a lower asking price for Deebo Samuel than they have for Brandon Ayuk. And I would not rule out a trade for Deebo Samuel up until week 1. Like it could still, it's still a possibility to me that Deebo Samuel gets moved. I don't think it's likely. Again, Kyle Shanahan, I was told that Kyle Shanahan wants both Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel this year on the roster. He wants to move forward with the offense like that, but they are willing to part with Deebo for the right price, and that price is lower than their price for Brandon Ayuk, obviously. And so therefore it's more likely that it happens. Not that it's going to happen, but that it's more likely it's going to happen. What I know is true, based on what people have told me who I trust, who have never been wrong, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers did in fact call on both of these wide receivers. Was it yesterday or the day before? To inquire. And again, found out that the 49ers want way more than they're probably willing to pay. And therefore, nothing as of right now is going to happen for either. I don't think anything's ever going to happen with Brandon Ayuk as far as him being traded. I wouldn't rule out Deebo being traded. I think that's still a possibility. But I also don't think it's very likely based on what they want for him versus what teams are willing to pay. What have you heard? Have you heard the same thing? Different? What have you heard?
So pretty much the same thing, a little different in a way. So I had actually heard that the Niners have been shopping Deebo since going all the way back to the combine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember. Shout out to Rohan, but when Rohan put out those articles, that is more of a possibility that Deebo was traded this year than people would really think.
Yeah.
Well, when Rohan was at the combine, I had heard the Niners are shopping him. So I
Yep.
was like, hey Rohan, you're out there, ask a couple of dudes, see what you hear. And I don't want to throw this out there, but Rohan obviously heard something, right? Like you don't just write those articles without hearing something or knowing something.
Mm-hmm.
And those articles are more so that he wasn't saying that he was going to be traded. He was just saying that there's a big possibility that the Niners think about it this year. And since the combine, they've been shopping him, and Deebo didn't like it. Now they wanted more than what they were going to get offered. From what I had heard, the max they were offered was a third rounder, and the Niners value their players, especially in their last window of trying to win a Super Bowl. So Debo's been upset this entire time. Like he's
Yeah.
been calm about it. Hasn't gone onto social media like he has because he has a contract. There's nothing truthfully he can do if he goes to social media like he did last time. Like he knows that
Mm-hmm.
play isn't going to work. So
Yeah.
everything I've heard was Debo's been more shopped than Brandon. Like from what I had heard, BA was never shopped. Teams called about BA. Niners never called teams regarding BA. Niners called teams regarding Deebo Samuel. And I think once you start doing that, that just shows, hey, we know the timeline is happening. We know if we could get something valuable this year, replace Deebo Samuel with a couple of picks or whatever, then we have to move off of him because one, you save cap for next year versus you do it next year, you take a cap hit. And I think the Niners are willing to take those big cap numbers this year to refix their cap situation. They took the Armstead situation. They were willing to take the Deebo situation in order to have that flexibility with cap next year. Just what they're asking, like you're saying, they're asking price for every player has been ridiculous. Remember
Mm-hmm.
when, for example, and I'm gonna throw this out there because people need to understand how the Niners value players. They were offered a second rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo at one point. They
Yeah.
decided to not take a second rounder for
The
Jimmy and
Patriots,
rather,
right?
I believe it was the Patriots. There's another team in there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So how do you not take a second rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo at the time, but
And weren't
instead
they
you let him
offered a
walk?
mid first last year for Deebo, I believe, like something like
During the 2021 draft, I believe it
yeah,
was pick 10. So the Jets were offering, and Joe Douglas confirmed this, that they had offered picks. They had offered a high pick for Deebo Samuel. They just wanted a pick in return with Deebo. So you're
yeah,
telling me you can't get pick 10, give Deebo on a future third. Like to me, that is what's like that's how much they value these players.
yeah,
And I get this year, right? Like last year and everything else, I understand like not valuing them. This year I understand it because you're in your last year with Brock Purdy being cap numbers that only go $1 million or whatever. So that's understandable because without those two dudes, you're not getting back to the Super Bowl. So I understand valuing both of them. But if they could have got away from Deebo this year, they should have, because the main question is you have it on your show. So I'll let you run away with it now from here.
right. Here's the question, right? That there's a reason that there's 11 wide receivers on the 49ers. There's a reason they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. And the 49ers had no intention of moving on from Deebo Samuel. You're not drafting Ricky Pearsall with pick 31. That's just the truth. So Slick Rick, whether it's this year, whether Samuel gets traded at some point this year, which may not be likely based on what they want for him and the timing of it. Um, post June 1st, there are advantages of trading him at that point, but that's kind of late. It may still happen. It would not surprise me if something still happens to Deebo Samuel based on everything I'm hearing. But regardless of that, after this coming season, I would say the odds that Deebo Samuel are on the 49ers after this season are probably like 5%, 10%. I think this is the last year you get. If Deebo Samuel plays with the 49ers in 2024, this is the last year we have with Deebo Samuel. Would you agree with that? What do you think the odds are that Deebo Samuel's with the team
I
past
don't
this
think
year?
Deebo's. I don't, and I've been saying this a lot on my show.
Yeah.
When the BA conversation would come up, I kept saying BA will be on the team. The Niners, and I said this multiple times, and people were like, "Ah, we haven't heard rumors about Deebo being shopped." The Niners don't have plans with Deebo in 2025. That
Yeah.
tells me a lot. Like that just
Yeah.
shows me that the Niners were willing to part ways with Deebo this year because they know they can't afford Deebo's contract with BA, Brock, Nick, Fred, Kittle, CMC, all these big contracts. They know they can't afford Deebo. And what you're doing is essentially you're paying Deebo Samuel not as a receiver at this point. You're
Yeah.
paying him as a weapon. And truthfully, he's been on a decline. And
Yeah.
so you can't pay him $28 million as a receiver
Yeah.
because truthfully he's not a true receiver. He's a weapon, and I think the Niners understand they could get that kind of production out of other players, and that's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall at pick 31, which in my opinion, I think is a mistake. When you take a player to replace someone a year early, you don't
Yeah.
take it that you don't do it that early in a draft.
Yeah.
Now,
And
if you
it's
look at
awkward. Go ahead. Go ahead.
it's very awkward. You're right. It
Yeah.
makes it an awkward situation. But when you're doing that, if you're truly in win now mode and Debo's on your roster, when does Ricky Pearsall play?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's not going to beat out Deebo year one. And I think that's where it's like, okay, now you should get a deal done if you truthfully think Ricky Pearsall is that guy to replace Deebo, because now you let him hit the field at his 20 rookie year. He's going to be 24. This was one
Yeah.
of my issues draft night. His come year 5 of Ricky Pearsall's contract, I don't foresee the 49ers extending him because he'll be 29 by then. The Niners
Yeah.
aren't going to want to extend a 29-year-old receiver who lives in the middle. He's going to be getting banged up with the hard hits and stuff like that. So for me, that's what was concerning. I was like, why not go get a corner round one, or an offensive center, tackle, right, or guard, whatever, in
Yeah.
round one, where essentially your team is getting better for the now and the future. And then
Yeah.
in the third, trade up, get a receiver that could replace Deebo. To me, that was a little concerning.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, Ricky Pearsall better put up round one numbers, because with Deebo on this roster, you took him, so he better put up those kind of numbers. So that's where I'm confused on it. When does
Yeah.
he replace him? I would say 2025. Why does he replace him? Because they understood that Deebo Samuel's contract was so expensive as a receiver that they couldn't afford to play Brandon Ayuk as a top receiver and Deebo Samuel as a top weapon.
Especially because at this point in Deebo Samuel's career, he's on the decline. Like, if we're being real, maybe he bounces back. I just don't see it. I think he's on the decline. Now, I will say he basically is entering a contract year, and so maybe that does give him that extra motivation. It is awkward though, right? Like, he was asked about it, and he says he knows what it is, and blah blah blah. Debo. Someone asked him about basically Ricky Pearsall being drafted to replace him, and I agree with you, man. I would have drafted Jackson Powers Johnson, no question. When I looked at the board at pick 31, I'm like, get Jackson Powers Johnson, because that's a center who to me is either the best or the second best center in this draft, who could be a player for you for 4 or 5 years and develop with Brock Purdy as Brock Purdy's center moving forward. Would have been an upgrade over Jake Brendel instantly. To me, would have been a starter week 1 if the 49ers would have, we know how the 49ers are. They may have not started him, but they probably should have drafted him and started him and built with Jackson Powers Johnson in round 1. I don't know if I believe that Ricky Pearsall is a round 1 talent. And I don't know if it's going to work out like that. He may end up being okay. He may end up being a slot guy. I don't know if he's a real wide receiver too, or if he's going to work out justifying being pick 31. What are your feelings on Pearsall?
When they drafted him, I thought he was a good receiver. When I had watched him, my biggest issues was he struggles against press man too often. Now, he don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he can't beat it, but he struggles against press man a little too often for my liking. I love how he wins against contested catches. He turns 50-50 balls into 75-25 balls. But if he doesn't have a free release and you get your hands on him, he struggles too often. And then he's 24 years old going into year 1. I didn't think he was a first round pick. I thought he was a late second, early third kind of guy.
Nobody thought he was a first round pick. And he wouldn't have been drafted in the first round if the 49ers didn't draft him.
Mm-mm. And so for me, it's when you take a guy like that, it's like, okay, you're reaching on him, but you're reaching on certain traits, right? The Niners drafted him, in my opinion, because the athleticism, for me, when you're looking at him, the 4.41 that they saw, the vertical, the long jump, and all that they saw, that doesn't show up on film. That 4.41, he doesn't play with a 4.41 speed. Right. Actually, since Jesus is saying this, I actually talked to a couple of dudes who played receiver in the NFL, and they said truthfully, they saw him as a receiver 3 with receiver 2 upside. And that says, like, whoa, when they said that, I was like, whoa.
You don't spend a first rounder on that.
I mean, and I think, since it's pick 31, I get spending that pick because you're getting the safe player, the safe pick. And that was a theme of the Niners, right? Go safe player. Go safe pick. Don't go for the upside guy. Don't go for the guy that could change your franchise. Go for the guy that was steady Eddie. We know we're gonna get with him. And I think that's where you put yourself in a hole going for guys like that at 31, because now, for example, I would have gone out of the receivers on the board, I would have gone A.D. Mitchell. I thought A.D. Mitchell was a better route runner, plays faster, could win 50-50 balls. I would have done that. Paired him with Brandon Ayuk. Now you have 2 great route runners. So we'll see. For me, it's gonna be fun because I'm a draft.
Yeah.
I love the draft. So I get to compare them for the next couple of years. Now, I feel like Pearsall's in a much better situation with the 49ers, better coach, better quarterback, who's been playing ready, versus A.D. Mitchell's going to go to an offense who quarterback's coming off a big injury, a good coach. So we'll see how that works out. But man, JPJ was there. Like that was a no-brainer. Zach Frazier was still there. Like, that's another no-brainer. Like, for me, that's what was a little bit confusing.
Yeah, and I honestly think the 49ers are going to look back. Maybe not the 49ers, but us as fans are going to look back and be like, we should have got Jackson Powers Johnson, because I think he's going to be a dude for the Raiders for years to come. And when you can get an upgrade at your center position, which to me, I rank offensive line higher than probably a lot of people. The 3 most important positions to me in the NFL is quarterback, number 1, blindside tackle, number 2, and center, number 3. That's how I rank positions in the NFL. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't rank a center as high as that, but that's how I look at it. And if you could upgrade it at that position with Jackson Powers Johnson, you're solid, you're upgraded, you're better than you were last year Whereas Ricky Pearsall, what's he even going to do? Is he going to he's going to share minutes? He's going to share snaps with. I always say minutes because I'm a former basketball coach, but he's going to share snaps here and there with Deebo, here and there with Jawan Jennings, and that's going to be his role. Maybe 30 catches this year, if that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think the 49er fans look back and probably wish they would have got Jackson Powers Johnson. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Or
Jackson Power.
or AD Mitchell, who to me is a true wide receiver too.
And when you look at it, like, so for me, and I agree with your stance on offensive line being a high priority for any NFL team. So for me, my priority, I don't care in terms of offensive tackle, center, guard. I look at it as you need to get your quarterback right.
Mm-hmm.
You need to protect your quarterback.
Yeah.
And you need to get after the quarterback. Those are the top three things. And if you have those three, you're going to be very, very successful. The Niners have two of those. They have a quarterback. They get after the quarterback. Unfortunately, they don't protect their quarterback. We've seen quarterbacks of the Niners go down far too often. And when you look at it, for example, look at the Chiefs, right? They didn't go offense. They didn't prioritize offensive tackle. They prioritized their interior offensive line. Because as a quarterback, you don't want to have to step into a pocket and your offensive lineman is getting pushed into your lap. And I think that's an issue, right? Like with Brock being a smaller frame quarterback. If you have a great interior offensive line, he's going to be more successful because he doesn't have to move as often. And I think that same thing with Drew Brees, what they did with Drew Brees in New Orleans. His interior O-line was elite. So for me, looking at teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, who have beaten the 49ers twice in the Super Bowl in their last 3 Super Bowl wins, they prioritized the offensive line. So, for example, they went 4th round offensive tackle last year. This year, they take a 2nd round offensive tackle. They don't care. They're making sure Mahomes is protected. And you see Mahomes tweet about it like, thank God I have Veach as my GM. Because he understands if he's protected, he gets to play longer and his team is better because of it.
Yeah. And so let's move forward then. So I would have personally, I think the 49ers are going to regret grabbing Pearsall and not one of these sinners in round 1, that pick 31. I'll be real. I haven't watched enough of Renardo Green. I know a lot of people like him. I know David likes him. I haven't heard whether you like him or not. I know Jesse likes him. And I just haven't watched enough to say that. Grant this morning said he reminds him of Jimmy Ward. If that's true, I'm ecstatic about Renardo Green. But again, I go back to offensive line being the most important position. And I thought the 49ers actually had a really good DB room before the draft this year. Now, they don't have any future plans at corner because all these guys are on 1-year contracts as of right now. So I understand the need for the future if you're not going to want to pay Charvarius Ward or Demo. I understand they're working on paying Diamador Lenore. But to me, it didn't make sense to grab a corner at that spot. I would have done what the Chiefs do. And it's hard to question what Chiefs do, right? The Chiefs, you just traded down with the team that beat you in the Super Bowl, and they go ahead and draft Kingsley, who I was really high on. And I know Marco was high on. I'm not sure if you can hear me or if he just disappeared, but I know I was very high on Kingsley, and I know you were high on Kingsley. And if the Chiefs are drafting Kingsley, I trust the Chiefs when it comes to offensive linemen more at this point than I do the 49ers. The 49ers are very good at drafting a lot of things. Offensive line has not been one of them. So for me, I would have went JPJ, and then I would have went Kingsley in the 2nd round. I don't know enough about Renardo Green. I haven't watched film on him yet to say one way or the other. He could end up being good right now based on the little bit of I've seen from him. He's in the 2nd tier for me of the guys that we drafted, but that's the direction I would have went. What do you think about the Renardo Green pick?
So I actually like the Renardo Green pick but there's 2 ways I look at it. If the 49ers go press man a lot more, the Renardo Green pick is great. If they stay in their off coverage, they cover 2, cover 4 defense that they've been running, it's a terrible pick. Like there's just 2 ways. Like he's a press man corner who could get up and press you, and that's where he lives. That's his bread and butter. Like he is great when he's in press man. Now he's not bad when he's in off coverage and in zone, but that's not who he is, right? So for example, when the Niners drafted Ambry Thomas, I was like, oh cool, they got a press man corner. he could get up in your face, athletic guy, he could get up in your face, and that's where he's better. And we've seen Ambry be better at that versus zone coverage and being in off. And I think if you put him in a similar situation, he might fail like Ambry did because you're not playing to his strength. And I think if you play to his strength, he'll be fine. Now, for me, I actually was going to tweet out earlier today. That's funny that you're bringing up who I would have taken and everything. I have a shadow draft that I had that I wanted to tweet the night of the draft or the day after the draft, but I've kind of held off on it because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna talk about it on the show and then I'll tweet it out. I had the Niners going. Me personally, I loved Kingsley, but I had always said from that week on my show, and like the whole week up to maybe a week and a half up to the draft, if AD Mitchell's there, I'm not passing on AD Mitchell. He's too good of a receiver for me to pass on. 31, I would go AD Mitchell. Second round, Kingsley. Third round, I would have traded back up, just like they did, for Javon Baker or Jalen McMillan, another receiver, because I truthfully think you need a lot of receivers on this team to fix the timeline. I mean, you get Brock more weapons for the next couple of years while he's high-paid quarterback. They're lower-paid receivers. And then I would have gone corner, either TJ Tampa or Cam Hart. And then I love the Mustafa pick. I think he's a good player. I would have gone Jaden Hicks. That's what I would have done differently. And then later in the round, I would have gone Austin Booker, an edge rusher, and then Bo Limmer, center, late in the sixth round. And then the seventh round, I would have went Leonard Taylor or Leonard Taylor, however you say his name. But I felt like the Niners did things a little interesting. They went safe picks, and I don't think those safe picks are going to hit, unfortunately, as much as we want.
All right, let me back up too because we didn't even bring up Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings is yet to sign his tender, right? So I'm not sure what that means. Maybe they get it done. But does this Ricky Pearsall, who's pretty much a slot guy, and Cowing, who's pretty much a slot guy, they drafted two receivers that are actually pretty similar. I think Pearsall has a higher ceiling to move up to a wide receiver 2 versus Cowing is probably just a pure slot guy, Ray McLeod type. But what does this mean for Juwan Jennings? Is it possible because they were unable to move Deebo and they drafted all these wide receivers that at some point they trade Juwan Jennings, or do you think they sign his tender and they keep him for this year?
I thought Jennings had signed his tender early March. Like, I could be wrong though.
It
So I
was
think he
reported
already
he was
signed.
going to. It was reported he was going to, but I don't think he has.
He had posted a picture on his Instagram a while back, and he
I'll
had
double
put
check it. Let me make sure.
Yeah, I think he had posted a picture and he's like, "We on year 4," and then he had like you could see like the signature on the bottom.
Okay.
But I don't know. Just because he posted a picture doesn't mean necessarily he signed it. I don't know if the Niners reported it or whatnot. But I thought he posted that he had signed that tender. But even then, right? Like,
oh, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. According to Brad, let me double check. But it sounds like he has.
I thought he did. I thought he did. But even then, right? It's a 1-year tender, so he's only going to be around 1 year. And and we're talking about a player who, truthfully, if the Niners win the Super Bowl,
they did. They did. I apologize. They did. Niners confirmed it too. So my fault. I thought they were talked about it, but they didn't. So he did sign it. I apologize. Yep.
You're good, but even then, like, right, like, truthfully, he was the MVP of the Super Bowl if the Niners win. Like, he was flat out the best player on the field at that time, and you only have him for 1 year. Shouldn't you maximize his value, or shouldn't you trade him? Like, maximizing his value is trading him now when he's on a 1-year deal where a team could extend him, and that's doing right by the player because you're not going to use him as a receiver 2. And truthfully, he should be used as a receiver 2 in the passing game. We see what he can do in the Super Bowl. We know who he is as a blocker. I think the Niners should play him more. And if they do, that puts Ricky Pearsall even down lower on the pecking order. And like at that point, it's like you took a receiver 4 for a Super Bowl run in the first round.
Yeah.
Like how can you sell it to us as a fan base that you're truthfully all in, but you're keeping all of the receivers for one last run, but instead didn't upgrade anywhere else in that first round? Like, you could have gotten an offensive lineman, a defensive tackle, a corner. Like, truthfully, like, that's where I'm like, wait, why not upgrade somewhere else for the immediate? And you could have gotten as a good of a receiver in the third. Javon Baker, in my opinion, is a better receiver than Ricky Pearsall coming out.
Yeah, I
So
like Malik
it's
Washington
confusing.
a lot, bro. And he went to Miami at 156, I believe. And Miami's watch what McDaniel does with Malik Washington, man. I'm telling you, that guy's nice too. So I feel like it was unnecessary, and you're right. And so it does make it brings up the question, right? Like if Ricky Pearsall is fourth on the depth chart, is he really fourth on the depth chart, or do they still plan on moving on from Deebo at some time this year?
And I think to be honest, I think you do it. I think you do it, man. Like it's eat the cap space this year, roll over the cap next year. Now, what this does is, and this is something I wanted the Niners to do philosophy wise. So this is why I didn't really mind the pick. I've been saying the Niners need to go a different philosophy offensively. I think the Niners need to do a more pass heavy offense and
Mm-hmm.
defensively up your secondary. Make it a more press man, make it harder for teams to beat you offensively and defensively. Ricky Pearsall tells me they should do that, right? Move Deebo. You don't have that gadget weapon where you have to throw 5 to 6 dump off passes in the screen game to him a game. So now with that, you have BA, Jennings, Pearsall, Cowing. You could throw a 4 receiver set out there. A true 4 receivers. Now, Jennings is your bigger slot guy. Hopefully, Ricky Pearsall could play outside. And then what that does is puts the ball in Brock Purdy's hands, right? Let Brock be that quarterback that the fan base thinks he could be. I
Yeah.
don't think I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I think he's going to be great if we do this. I want to see it before I pay him $50 million, $60 million. And that's what the Niners should do. So for me, I'm trading Deebo now because you save cap space, you let it roll over next year, and it lets you see, truthfully, if Brock Purdy could carry an offense in the pass game. A lot of people are like, oh, he did last year. Man, we were the last ranked offense passing wise. Like, don't tell me he carried an offense passing. He was an efficient offense, and the playmakers did a lot with what he gave them. So that's where I want to see the Niners go. But it's going to be interesting. Me personally, I would already have traded Deebo. I would have taken a third rounder for him, and I would have got whatever position you thought was the best player available at that time.
Yeah, I think I would have too. I've been saying that for a while. I agree. I just don't from what you get from Debo for what you pay him, it doesn't make sense. He just doesn't give you the he's had a couple really good years. It's just I don't see him. He's injured a lot. He misses a lot of games. And even when he's there, he just doesn't seem to be that same dude. Now, when the ball's in his hands, he is exciting, one of the best players to watch once the ball's in his hands. He's not a great route runner. He doesn't have the best hands. He doesn't go up and get the ball. You kind of have to script things for him. One thing about Ricky Pearsall that I did see is that on screen passes, he had, I believe, one of the best out of all the receivers on screen passes as far as yards after catch. Like he does a really good job. If he can take that role, if you want to run screens for Ricky Pearsall, he's not going to run over guys, but he's so quick and fast that he can do well in those screen passes. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. To me, it makes me feel like that Ricky Pearsall pick that they either thought they were going to trade Deebo that day, or they still think they're going to move on from Deebo. I don't see drafting Ricky Pearsall round 1, pick 31, if your plans really are for 2025 for him. I don't see that. And so maybe they thought they were going to trade Deebo and it didn't work out, or they still plan on moving on from Deebo post June 1st when they can save some money. So I don't know,
And
man.
it's not gonna sit well with a fan base who loves Deebo. Like the fan base is Deebo is a fan favorite. Like
Yeah.
he electrifies an offense with one play, right? Like the
Yeah.
fans love him for that. So connecting Pearsall to Deebo for the rest of his career, it's a pretty bold move if you look at it. Like, and that's why I would have went offensive line at pick 31, and then took a pick later for a receiver, because now it's okay. Well, you took a receiver to replace Deebo, but at least it wasn't a first rounder. Like you're not expecting first. You don't now. If you take a guy in the third, you don't have first round expectations for him. You don't. Okay, this guy could come along in a year or two, and you're fine. You took him in the third for a reason.
Yeah.
Taking a dude in the first, he better come in year one, the year he replaces Deebo, whether that's this year, next year. And if it's this year, I agree with a lot of fans who are saying, well, if he comes in year one, he better put up Puka numbers. I agree with the fan base saying some wild things like that. You're only going to see Puka a 1 of 1. Puka's 1 of 1. You don't see years like that from rookies. So the fact that that happened, I get the fan base being upset and saying, okay, year one, you step into the light, you better put up some drastic numbers. Well, you better be a 900-yard receiver or a 1,000-yard receiver because you were drafted to be that. Deebo got
Yeah.
paid to be that, and he just hasn't done that.
And when you compare him to Deebo, I think he's a better route runner. I think he's better hands for sure than Deebo, in my opinion. He's not as good at running dudes over. Although he tries, he doesn't take plays off, which is better than Deebo. But I don't know if he gets separation better than Deebo in press man coverage, and that's what the problem was in the Super Bowl. So that's yet to be determined too. So I don't know, man. I don't know if Ricky's ever going to live up to the round one status that he got, and I feel like it could have really upgraded the offensive line there. Okay, so we talked about the receivers. Who's your favorite picks in this draft? Like favorite picks in this draft. What draft picks do you think the Niners did well with?
If we're gonna talk value picks, like in terms of like who do I love the most in terms of value and where they were drafted, I gotta go Puny. I really like Puny at the Senior Bowl. But I was talking to a couple of people about him prior to the draft. I
Yeah,
thought he was a guy come in, you could play center, you could play guard immediately. So I think that'd be probably my favorite pick out of all of them. Good athleticism, could be a puller. I love how he finishes blocks. Great pass set, one of the widest pass sets and I would say setups in general as an offensive lineman. Like his base is extremely wide. I don't know if he changes that with the Niners. They shouldn't let him change anything because when
yeah,
you're a good player, you're a good player. I would say Puny, and then after that, probably Mustafa. Like because you're again, I think he could play free safety, and I know you were very high on him.
yeah.
Um, so I think those two, but even then, it's like I thought Jaden Hicks, who went to the Chiefs, was a much better player than Mustafa.
Hmm.
So it's like, and he went 11 picks later. So it's like kind of hard for me, like as someone who loves the draft and likes to scout just for fun, my personal preference and stuff like that, and for
Yeah,
other like avenues that I'm in. So for me, doing that, it's like the value that the Chiefs got 11 picks later for Jaden Hicks, in my opinion, taking him where Mustafa was would have been a much better pick than taking Mustafa, a more complete safety, a guy who truly has done it more. 6'2", can play that deep safety, could play in the box. I personally like the picks. I just don't like that a guy that I had ahead. And then who knows? I could be completely wrong. The Niners could freaking get the next Hufanga, right? For all that matters. But also too, I think the Chiefs just got a starter who now, in my head, I'm going to be comparing because you took a safety and I had a safety higher that was just went later. So I guess that's where I'm at. But I would go Puny as my favorite draft pick.
yeah. It was funny. Let me share this real quick because I literally just tweeted this out this morning. My favorite two draft picks. I don't know if you saw this before the show,
Not
but
having it.
yeah. So I said Mustafa was my favorite, but now thinking about it, to me, it's Mustafa and Pooney. Now, I would like to say I would have got Pooney if, anyways, but I probably wouldn't have. Right, like I like the Pooney draft pick afterwards, but had they drafted a center in round one and a tackle in round two, I probably would have not got a third offensive lineman. I would like to say I would have, but the reality is after spending two picks on offensive lineman, I probably would have gone a different direction. But now that the 49ers picked him, if I'm talking about just the picks that the 49ers made, to me, I really like Pooney. My number one is Mustafa. I've been on that. I've been really just on this dude. Wake Forest dude is just, to me, he's underrated. The things they say are his weaknesses, to me, he's actually not bad at all. He's actually pretty good. Like we all know he can tackle. We all know he's like built like a brick house. He's a shorter dude, but he plays big. Uh, they say he's slow and can't do well in coverage based on his 40 time, but there's 40 time and then there's on the field speed. And on the field, he was clocked at 23 miles per hour. So I really like Malik. I always want to call him Malik, but I really like Malik Mustafa. I think he's going to be better than Brown and better than Hufanga. I really believe that. I think he can tackle just as good as either one of them, and I think he can cover just as good as either one of them. He probably tackles better than all of them, to be real. He wraps up. I love and I like Huff, man. I really do. Huff's one of my favorite players. When he struggled year one, I told everybody he's going to bounce back and have a great season. So it's not a knock on Huff. It's just I think Malik Mustafa is that good. If there's two players that I think are going to actually work out for the 49ers, it's Malik Mustafa and it's Dominic Pooney. I think those two dudes are going to work out. Now, if you look at all the drafts for the 49ers, a really good season means 4 or 5, or a really good draft means 4 or 5 dudes work out. Maybe one UDFA. If I had to bet on UDFA, it's probably the center. I think he's going to end up being better than Jared Kingston.
That's what I was about to say right now.
Dugan, yeah. I think Dugan might end up being better than Jared Kingston, and honestly, the quarterback they got might be better than Brandon Allen. So we'll see about those guys. Tight ends kind of interesting too, but it's not realistic to expect all these UDFAs to actually be somebody. But in general, 4 or 5 dudes work out in a great draft. In a bad draft, only 1 or 2. In a medium draft, like somewhere in between, average draft. So the guys that I'm confident in working out, and I'll put them in order, and then I want to hear what you take. To me, again, Dominic Pooney, Malik Mustafa. Malik's my favorite, and then Pooney after that. I actually really like the 7th rounder, Tatum Bethune. When I look at him, I think he's could actually be somebody. So he's on that second tier for me. First tier is Dominic Pooney, Malik Mustafa, guys I really believe in. I really don't have any question about them working out in the NFL. The second tier are Tatum Bethune and Renardo Green. Renardo Green, just because I haven't seen enough of them. So maybe I'm just being completely ignorant. I just got to go watch more of them. From what I hear from David, you, everybody else, they tend to really like this guy. After that, the boomer bust guys for me, is Isaac Grendo, who I wanted. He was on my board. I want him just because of his athleticism is freaky as hell. And it could work out, but his production in college wasn't great. So you have to ask yourself why, right? So Isaac's a boomer bust guy. Ricky Pearsall is a boomer bust guy. He's on the third tier to me. Ricky's either going to work out or he's going to be a horrible bust, especially because you drafted him so high. He may never live up to that first round talent, which would make him a bust. Even if he's average, if you pick him at 31 and he's average, that's a bust pick, right? So Isaac and Ricky are my boomer bust guys. Jarrett Kingston, honestly, I'm not very high on at all when I watch him. I don't know if he's going to work out for the 49ers. And then Jacob Cowan, I just don't know. I got to watch more of him, but he seems okay. Maybe he should be in that second tier, like we'll see. What do you think of Jacob Cowan? I haven't asked you about him.
I mean, I think Jacob Cowan's a really good receiver. I think he runs great routes. The athleticism's there. The Niners needed that kind of speed in their offense. But again, it's just when you're looking at it, it's like, where does he fit? Like, truthfully, like, unless the 49ers truthfully do, and I don't know what Kyle's plan is. I know none of us do. But it just kind of points to a more pass-heavy offense. And if that's the case, cool. We should see Cowan probably be, and people are going to hate it, probably going to be the better receiver than Ricky Pearsall. Like, I'm just being like, because you're going to line him up in this, you're going to line him up in the slot, and he has free releases. He's going to eat in the slot with Brandon Ayuk. And so, like, that's where you would, for me, it's like, damn, like, Cowan is probably going to put the better numbers up in the slot. So I really like that pick. Now, I would have gone other directions because there's other players on the board, but I understood getting Jacob Cowan, like athletic, the speed is there. Not many 5'8" or 5'10" receivers that are 165 last in the NFL. That's a concern. The last one we seen was Tank Dow, and he broke his leg year 1. So it's like, how does his body react to bigger dudes, bigger, stronger dudes? But that's where I would be with Cowan.
Yeah, to me, I wouldn't have drafted Ricky Pearsall, not in round 1. Not in round 2, I wouldn't have. I just don't see him as a need for the 49ers. And then when it comes to Cowan, he was drafted in round 5. I'm trying to think what pick that was. Was he drafted before Miami drafted Malik Washington?
Cowan was drafted, and that was one of the picks that I would have gone Malik Washington based off of who was there over Cowan. The more true slot receiver doesn't have as much explosive speed or explosiveness, but in my opinion, I thought he was a better overall receiver, more of a true slot kind of guy. Then I think the Niners wanted to go more athleticism and speed.
Mhm.
So that's what they ended up doing. But Malik Washington was still there.
Well, I'm telling you, man, I've been saying it for a long time. I think Malik Washington is going to be a dude in the NFL, and I think Mike McDaniel is going to he's gonna dial some shit up for Malik Washington, man. You guys watch. Quote me on it. I really believe in Malik Washington. I don't think I would have drafted Ricky Pearsall, and I think instead of Callan, I would have got Malik Washington. He was the guy I wanted this entire time. Now, I do like that the 49ers are trying to. One thing I tweeted out before the draft, like in February, is I would like to see the 49ers get younger and faster this year and then build up the right side of the line. We'll see if Pooney's going to help on that right side. He might. And they did get younger a little bit and they got faster. A lot of old dudes, though, they drafted, right?
This would be if you look at it, Ryan, it's like the youngest old team in the NFL. Like essentially, that's what it's going to be. Like our average age of players is going to go up because everyone that they decided to draft is a 5th or a 6th-year player. So it's like, all right, you guys are all 24 now, so our average age would be around 27, 28.
Yeah. Yeah, they drafted a bunch of old dudes. You know what's weird is this is like, does this have something to do with Brock Purdy? Like, I know everyone said when they drafted Brock Purdy and the success they've had with Brock Purdy based on his experiences, why he was able to step in so quickly and have success. Do you think they applied that to every position in this draft, or does this speak more about them looking at their window and wanting guys like that? Why do you think they went so old? Like all these guys are 4th year, 5th year, 6th-year seniors.
Truthfully, I think they went the safe pick. Like they went with players that they know who could step in year one if they needed them to, and they could contribute because they're a little more developed. But that's what you're gonna get with a guy who's in his 4th, 5th, 6th year. Like I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, Ricky Pearsall was killing dudes at Florida." Well, yeah, dude. Imagine a 23-year-old dude going up against 18, 19-year-olds who were in their 1st year of college. You don't expect them to light it up, like it just doesn't make sense. Like you're one, you have more growing man strength. 2, you've been having 4 or 5 years to truthfully establish who you are as a player, get better at your craft year in, year out. Like, of course you're gonna be better. Like you're gonna be lighting dudes up year in, year out. So that's where I am. Like, I get the puny pick. I get them. Like, I get why you went those picks. It's a safe player. It's a player that you expect to be a contributor. And I think cheap, safe players make sense. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan mentioned it during their press conference. They want players who they know can step in if anything happens within the next few years, and they could get immediate production from them, and that's what they're getting. Guy, for example, Deebo's gone.
Are they scared, bro? Like,
Scared money don't make money.
Are they scared though? Think about this. Mike McGlinchey, 9th overall pick, 1st round. They went with a tackle. He ended up not being worth that, right? Then they spent 3 first-round draft picks on their quarterback. They ended up trading him for a 4th 2 years later. Wasted 3 first-round draft picks and an inexperienced guy in Trey Lance. Then they get Brock Purdy, who's their 7th rounder. He's experienced. He comes in and he does well. Are they scared? Are they drafting scared?
I would say, yeah. They're drafting to not miss.
Yeah.
And
kind of like how when they play to not lose sometimes.
And that is, in my opinion, that's sort of an issue, right? Like when you draft to not miss, you're probably gonna miss. Like there's a reach board that the Niners, I don't know if you've seen it, but I think Jesse kind of posted it. But I think that's pretty accurate, and it's been pretty accurate in terms of I've been on live with Jesse and David for the past couple of years, and every time one of those players were drafted by us, our reaction was that was a reach. Yeah. If you look at those projections, it says they were reaches, and those players didn't pan out. So essentially, it's can you get production from them? Yeah, you could get production from Ricky Pearsall, absolutely. But if you're not getting him to be a 2nd-year player, 2nd contract player, defeats the purpose of taking a guy like that in the 1st round. 1st round guys are to have your franchise built on. The later rounds are to build depth. That's how I see it. Now, you do get a lot of times you get older guys or later guys in the draft who become starters. That happens obviously because opportunity. You give them an opportunity, they take advantage of it, and they show you why they should have been drafted earlier. It just, for me, I felt like the Niners and at times were playing money ball. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. They went, you know what? And this happened with the Kingston pick. I know for sure this happened because they saw his short shuttle was a 4-4 or something, and players who have a 4-4 shuttle tend to start games, and when they start, they don't give up their starting job. And I know for a fact the Niners had those numbers, and they'll, you know what? Let's moneyball it with this pick. Let's not go the safe pick and go Bo Limmer. Let's moneyball it and let's go Jarrett Kingston. Let's go a player who's not as good, who the consensus had as an undrafted player, and let's do that. So like that's kind of like the stuff. It's like, why? Like, why do you go moneyball when you don't have to? You've been good drafting late in the draft, or do they feel, you know what? We lost Adam Peters. Let's go safe picks and let's not go upside.
Yeah,
that could also be it. That could also be it too.
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on this, man. We'll wrap it up with this one right here. Daniel put up, I forget the guy's name. What's his fish name? I don't know. Put up
Chase Daniels.
Chase Daniels said that Brock Purdy's top 3 or 4 quarterback. I have him around 10, and that's before this year when you got Caleb Williams and other rookies coming in, and Anthony Richardson coming back, who could end up rising to the top as well. Right now, I have him roughly around 10. I don't have him 3 or 4. We'll see what happens after the season. Brock Purdy has a full opportunity to improve. It's going to be hard for him to improve, to be honest with you. Like he did well last year, but he does have a full, healthy offseason in front of him. He's lifting, he's getting stronger, he's working on his mechanics. So Brock Purdy could climb up that ladder even higher for me, and maybe he ends up being a 3rd or 4th round pick. But there's some rookies that are stepping in. There's Anthony Richardson coming back. There's some second-year guys. Where do you have Brock Purdy ranked, if you mind me asking? I didn't prepare you for this question, so I apologize.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
I would probably
Roughly.
have him the back end of top 10, if not one of the first 2 dudes in that top 12. Like, I don't, and let me put it this way. If he was a top 3 quarterback or top 4 quarterback, we would have been Super Bowl champions. Plain and simple. Yeah. If you're a top 3 or 4 quarterback with that kind of team, you held the best quarterback to possibly ever play the game behind Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes to 19 points in regulation, you probably should win that game if you're a top 3 or 4 quarterback. So for me, Brock Purdy is, in my opinion, a good quarterback. He has the right skill set, the mind, the timing of Kyle Shanahan's offense. But I want to see him take the next step. Let Kyle put the ball in his hands more. Let Kyle show us that he trusts Brock Purdy. Like, that's what I want to see. Don't call it a third on 3rd down or 2nd down. Don't run the ball in the red zone in a key situation in the Super Bowl to the right side that you can't run the ball to the right side.
Yeah, Brock Purdy wants to, if he wants to be top 3 or 4, 3rd and 4, 2 minutes left, Super Bowl, 4th quarter, he finds BA as the hot when he's being blitzed, and we win that Super Bowl. That's the, if you want to be a top 3 or 4 quarterback, those are the expectations I have for you. And Kyle needs to get out his damn ear. Like, Kyle needs to give this kid some freedom. Like, he's yelling CMC, 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 which is the wrong hot. And he's confusing the shit out of Brock Purdy in that situation.
So the thing Purdy, though, is on the play you're talking about, though, Ryan, I know what you're talking about. So he's yelling CMC, but Brock can't hear him at that point because it's under the so after 15 seconds of their headset goes B, and then they can't hear each other. So he's saying like on the sideline, he's hoping he goes CMC, but he can't hear him at that point.
Okay, well, at least he was still wrong either way.
Either way, he's wrong.
Brock didn't hear it. Yeah. I mean, but what I want Brock is to analyze that situation and see it for himself. You know, if he ended up throwing to Juwan Jennings, who it was, that's what I want. If Brock does that, that's when I'll be like, yeah, this dude's top 3 or 4. He has one of the top mentalities, I would say, in NFL, and it comes with experience. I hope he just becomes more assertive and takes control this year with protection and just, you know, switching off plays, recognizing the blitz, recognizing where your best passing option is, and kind of learns to tune out Kyle Shanahan. I've had I've had sons that play basketball for a long time, and there's this one coach, man, and I swear he's kind of just like the worst coach. Like, he's bad. And so I would just tell him, like, dude, I always teach my kids to respect their coach. I never tell them not to listen to this coach, except for this one coach. I would just tell him, look, nod your head, say yes, coach, and then go do what you know you're supposed to do. And I want Brock Purdy to be that guy this year. Like, Kyle tells you something, nod your head, yes, coach, and then go do what you need to do for this team. So that's kind of how I see the situation, man.
But the thing is, though, is if we do have Brock do that, that's where you do see the major regression, in my opinion, because he did that at Iowa State. He went off script a little too often, and that's where some of those interceptions came. That's where he felt like, for example, when he does that 360 spin to throw the ball away, that's where you saw that Iowa State stuff. And I think Kyle's like, dude, what are you doing? You're putting the ball in harm's way. You stop seeing him do that. So
if he wants to be top 3 or 4, he's going to have to do that and do it well. And if he can't do that, then he's not 10. He's further down the road. If he's only a robot, if he's only good when he's a Kyle Shanahan robot out there, then I have him ranked too high. So that's what I'm saying. Like, show me that you can do that, and you're a top 3-4 quarterback. If you can't do that, you're probably not even good enough to be 10. Then you're just a product of the system, you know. So
and I think that's why the Niners should, and it's gonna be this is a long conversation, but and I think that's why the Niners should put the ball in his hands a lot more this year. Do you see what you have before you pay him $60 million? Look what they did with truthfully, we have not seen Brock have to carry the offense passing wise. We don't see him throw 40 plus times. Top 5 quarterbacks, they're demanding to throw 40 plus times. Like, hey, not put the ball in my hands. Let him throw 40 plus times, 35, 40 times. Let's see what the offense looks like. If the offense takes a step back, if he takes a major step back, then that probably tells you he's not a franchise quarterback, and he's a quarterback who is great under a Kyle Shanahan system. Now, it's not a problem, because Kyle's system is a really, really good system, and all you have to do is, hey, Brock, we're gonna dial it back. We're gonna go back to our game plan. You're not that great of a quarterback. Let's put it in a situation where you're successful and you don't look like you're just a system quarterback. We'll throw more something, but man, if he was a great quarterback, like Chase Daniel said, top 3, top 4, we're Super Bowl champions. If you're gonna rank them that high with the Tom Brady, the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allen, Joe Burrows, and those kind of guys, you win the Super Bowl that year. Like, it's plain and simple.
And but what people are going to say is, but Josh Allen and Joe Burrow don't win a Super Bowl. But the difference is this team. This team is the best roster in the NFL, and that's the point Marco's made. With this team, if you're a top 3 quarterback with this team in that situation, you win the thing. So I just want to explain that, because I already knew what was coming in the comments. Real quick, guys. For those who don't know, my primary source of income is I'm a real estate broker and mortgage broker in the state of California. I also have a solar business, as well as I can connect you with a company I partnered with to get your credit fixed. All of that stuff, as well as where you can subscribe to my second channel. I'm working on a new video that I'm editing and putting out soon called Meal Tickets. All of that stuff you can find right there, RyanGHensley.com. So please go visit RyanGHensley.com. Hit me up if you need any of those things. I would very much appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to Clutch Gene Sports. I'm going to be real with you. Marco should have way more subs than he has. You guys need to go subscribe if you he's good, man. He knows his shit. He knows what he's talking about. He has connections. I don't care what weirdos out there hate on my guy for actually having connections just because they don't have connections. It's not Marco's fault that you don't know anybody, okay? Marco does. I promise you that he does. I know this for a fact. He knows who I know. I know who he knows. I promise you, Marco knows what the fuck he's talking about. Go subscribe to Clutch Gene Sports. Don't listen to the weirdos that hate just because they don't know anybody. Go subscribe to Clutch Gene Sports today, right now. Do it. And Marco, thank you very much for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the endorsement. I really do. It's great when it comes from you, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Marco's going to be on with me throughout the season. So stay tuned. If you're not subscribed to me yet, make sure you subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10K before the season. It's going to happen. Hit the like button on this video. In the comments, let me know what you think. Where does Brock Purdy rank? Is he top 3 or 4? Is he 10th? Where do you think? Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. I'm going to actually be back tomorrow. You guys asked me to do more shows. A couple of you guys did. So guess what? I'm doing another show with Rohan on Thursday. Usually I'm off Thursday. We're doing a show tomorrow. I appreciate you guys. Tune in tomorrow. Every day, 9 a.m. weekdays. We will be here. Thank you guys. Thanks, Marco.
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for watching the Ryan G. Hensley Show. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. The Ryan G. Hensley Show is brought to you by Hensley Real Estate and Mortgage. I've been operating my real estate business in the state of California since 2009, and I would love to help your family. We are also sponsored by Hensley Solar. I can put solar on your house in up to 38 states. Underdog Fantasy is a sponsor of the channel. Please check out the details in the description to see how you can join Underdog Fantasy and get $100 matched in your initial deposit. And finally, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Blue Water Credit. They are the best credit repair company I've ever dealt with. If you want to fix your credit, reach out to Blue Water Credit.